Namaskar, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today is a very special day for me because one of the one of the intellectuals, persons, or leaders, modern Kshatri warriors, whatever you want to call, who inspired me to research and understand the phenomena of urban nexus, and therefore made a movie and finally a book. And so you can call my intellectual guru inspiration. Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji is with me today, and it's a great honor, Rajiv ji. Welcome.
Welcome, Vivek. I miss the moments we spent together in my house in Princeton, and I welcome you back. I hope you'll come and do that someday.
Yeah, lovely house you have. And what I loved was the drive when I drove to your house, full of nature and so beautiful.
Yeah. So please tell me when you're there next.
Yeah. So it's a great day, my friends, because I received this wonderful book, which has created kind of a mini revolution in India. And it has done what it was supposed to do, awaken the sleeping Hindus. And why Hindus? I would say sleeping Bharatiyas. Anybody who's a Bharatiya, who lives on this great land, this great civilization, is now, who's touching this book is getting awakened. So I received this book. Thank you for that. And I, as you can see, I have been putting lots of marks, my own notes. Rajiv ji, snakes in the Ganga. So thanks for writing Ganga, not Ganges. You call it Breaking India 2.0. So I definitely understand why you are calling it 2.0, because this war is not over. So on one hand, you are fighting this Breaking India forces. I have gone into more niche sector called urban naxals, but more or less, all of them are from the same army of demons,
Yes.
So they are being led by the same motivation. Why have you called it snakes in the Ganga? Who are these snakes? I know Ganga. I have grown up near Ganga. My village is on Ganga. And as a child, I have gone and I learned my swimming in Ganga. There are crocodiles in Ganga. And we were always scared of crocodiles, but now you have gone into the kingdom of snakes. So please explain, what is this kingdom of snakes?
Great question. So, it's a metaphor. When you are in the Ganga, it's a safe place. It's a pure place. You're not in fear. You don't think there is any danger. The people around you are assumed to be very nice and goody. But, what we are saying is that hidden under the surface is danger. And that's what we are referring to. And so if there are snakes, there is poison. And that is a metaphor for the ideology. You can call it wokeism. You can call it critical race theory. You can call it Breaking India 2.0 ideology. So there is poison, but there are people and institutions spreading this poison. They are creating these snakes, breeding them, nurturing them in certain places. Like I picked Harvard University, which is the major nest of snakes. And from there, they are spreading these snakes all over, including India and BBC and Washington Post and New York Times, all these places, and US Congress. These snakes have been spread, and these people are having a very negative effect on India and on Hinduism. So this is what the message of the book is, and it uncovers a large number of such projects and the individuals that are behind it.
Wonderful. So Harvard, I'll come. I want to spend good time on that because that interests me a lot. But let me just, before we begin, I just want to know the background of this book. It's friends, whoever buys this and you get to read, this is almost 812-page book. So it's not an easy read. And this is one of the greatest academic work which has come out of India. I know right wing is very often blamed for not doing research and academic work. Rajiv ji has been also telling me this secretly, that people should spend more time on research and doing academic work, because the only way you can fight these snakes and crocodiles and urban naxals and Breaking India forces is by pinning them down with the language they understand. That is of research, academic papers and all. And this is full of data points, full of what surprises me, that out of 812 pages, almost 80 pages, you have endnotes and you have references and bibliography, and indexes, you have supported it with so much of authenticity and this thing. First, tell me, how long did it take you, Rajiv ji, to write it? Let's go more first, understand the demography of the child, the geography of the child, before we get into physics and chemistry of this book. How long did
Yeah.
it take you to do this research work, and what all it involved?
So the project has been going on for a long time, because when I wrote the original Breaking India 12 years ago, and it never stopped. The Kurukshetra is going on, the war is going on. So you have to keep up with what the other side is doing. So I was always tracking, okay, what are they doing, how are they advancing, and are our people keeping up with it? And I felt, and so in that sense, the tracking has been going on. And my tracking of Harvard is 30-year-old project, because I used to fund them. I used to fund them before any of these Indian billionaires were funding them. And so I was watching what they're doing. I was a celebrity there because I was the only one funding them long ago in the 90s. And I stopped funding because I realized that they are full of snakes and crocodiles, and you can keep feeding them, but they are not going to change. So I stopped funding them. So in that sense, I have known these people for a very long time. But the actual sitting down and putting the whole final thing together, taking all my notes and all the research, has taken about 3 years, I would say 3 years, very intense work. One thing I want to say about the size of the book, so people don't get discouraged, is if you read the introduction, which is 35, 40 pages, and then every chapter has a 1-page overview. I deliberately wrote it so that, a person who wants to read no more than 100 pages can understand the entire book, because you read the introduction and then you read the 1-page, 1.5-page overview of every chapter. And
then you have conclusion also.
And then there's a conclusion.
Also.
Yeah. So between the introduction and conclusion, there are 22 chapters, and you need to read 1.5 pages for each chapter. You will know everything that the book is saying, but you will not have the proof and the backup and the data evidence, which is the next level of detail. So if you trust me, if you want to first say, okay, let's find out what is Rajiv saying, what is Rajiv and Vidya saying, then you don't need to read the details, just introduction and the overviews and conclusion. And this will tell you in less than 100 pages, the entire thesis. Now, the second thing I want people to know is that every chapter is independent. So if you want to know the Harvard's attack on IITs, that's chapter 4. If you want to know what is Suraj Yengde doing at the Kennedy School with the Afro-Dalit project, yes, that is chapter 5. If you want to know what is Anand Mahindra doing at Harvard, how is he feeding the snakes, there is a chapter on that. So each chapter is completely self-contained. You can read just one chapter after having read the overviews, and it'll be complete. So in a sense, we've written it such that people don't have to read the whole book if they don't want to, and still get a lot out of it.
Let's begin, right? The whole book is about 4 big stories, right?
Right.
You have written a lot about let me read. The first one is how critical race theory has taken over the leftist rhetoric in the West, even though it often espouses ideals that are inimical to many core components of classical liberalism. And then you also talk about Americanization of Marxism.
Yes.
Right now, this is I understand definitely what you have written, but people who are going to listen to this podcast, how do they understand what is this Americanization of Marxism? Because this is oxymoron.
Yeah, it is. So, the way to understand it is, like I wrote the book Breaking India, and actually I started this project writing a book called Breaking America. I'll tell you a secret. I wanted to write a book called Breaking America because I've been discussing with a lot of Americans who are anti-wokeism, and a lot of Americans are. And they said, you have the background, you have done this before. Maybe what happened to India, this Breaking India, is now happening to America. So we need to write about that also. So actually, I have a 300-page draft called Breaking America. And then I expanded the project to all these other things, and it became too much. So I decided I'll just limit myself to a summary, and that is the first chapter called The Americanization of Marxism. So what it says is that today, wokeism, which is a form of Marxism, but Americanized Marxism, is breaking America. Because you have the extreme end of the Democratic Party, they call themselves progressives, and you have this Lady Omar there, and you have all these Indians are there Premila Jaipal, who is in the US Congress, Ro Khanna. The strange thing is there are 4 or 5 Indians in the US Congress, in Democratic Party, and they are all supporting this kind of a stuff. They supported this bill to criminalize Islamophobia, so that anyone in the world who criticizes Islam would be violating American law. I mean, utter nonsense. So I would say that America is in serious trouble of a intellectual civil war because this is happening. And this is now defining the Republicans versus Democrats in a very serious way. That is the first big story, that this Marxist originated idea has taken hold in America. Now, what is different between Marxism classically and this is that Marxism was a class struggle of economic categories, not race. It was not a fight between a majority race and minority race, or a majority religion and a minority religion. It was a fight of the people who don't own economic resources, the means of production, the proletariat, versus the bourgeoisie, who are the elites who own the capital. So that was Marxism, but now it has been adapted to make it into a theory of race. So the blacks are the oppressed, the whites are the oppressors, and the blacks have to overthrow the whites, dismantle their structures. They are allowed to do cancel culture. You've been a victim of it. I've been a victim of it. And so blacks are a protected class. And once this critical race theory established itself with race as the basis, then the Muslims got attached also as a protected class. वो भी oppressed है. Then the LGBTQ. So now a whole lot of people who call themselves victims of the United States have clubbed together to kind of overthrow the structures which they feel are oppressing them for many, many generations. And they are protected from criticism. And the others are accused of being oppressors, even if you've done nothing wrong, but you've been born in the wrong ethnic group or the wrong family, you are an oppressor by birth. So actually, it is full of nonsense, and some people are now pushing back. People are pushing back in a big way, and I got into it as the Indian voice with my conditioning and my knowledge of India, looking at United States suffering some sort of these things. Quotas are coming, race quotas are coming. We are familiar with it. So my Breaking America is an important book I'm going to put out also.
You've written a lot about the Indianization of critical race theory. You've spoken a lot about critical race theory here.
Yes.
Okay, and I also faced when I was in US last year to promote my film, and whatever opposition was there, it was because they said, it's not that I'm ever aware of this, but they say, you are a Brahmin. Okay, and what right you have to make a film on Kashmir? Because Muslims are oppressed in Kashmir. You are the oppressor, so you can't make this film. Ditto the same logic was used when my event was cancelled last minute at Oxford. You have been a victim of Oxford cancellation gang. Yes. So they used the same thing. They said that these people are terrorists, not by choice, but because of oppression. Number one. The liberal, the wokeism is against fundamentalism.
Right.
On the face of it. At the same time, they always stand and support fundamentalism of Islam.
Right.
Now, this is something which is beyond my comprehension.
I'll explain.
And you have spent good deal of number of pages and research. It's full of that. And you have used critical race theory, intersectionality. Very often you have given charts, people who don't know. This book is backed by great graphs and charts. And my God, this is a real great delight to read this. Can you please elaborate on this, Rajiv ji, please?
Yes. Wonderful question. I'm very happy that we are discussing this and you are drilling deep. I love that. So, what has happened is the Marxism says that the oppressed are a protected class, which means that, you have to give them some special concession. You can't criticize them and you can't talk back at them. They can cancel you because you are the oppressor. But you can't say, okay, the same rules apply to you. The rules are different for the oppressor and oppressed because the oppressed have to rise and overthrow in a violent revolution. So therefore, now the question is, anyone who can claim that we are also the oppressed people becomes a protected class. Muslims have very successfully, when the Black Lives Matter movement happened, I sympathized with the blacks. I have supported the Black Lives Matter movement. I funded it. But very soon the Muslims captured it. The Islamic people and the leftist Marxist people captured this, and they convinced the blacks that, you know, they're going to all work together. So now Muslims have become a protected class. The strange thing is, when it was 9/11, just a couple of decades ago, Muslims were on the run. Everybody, left wing, right wing in the United States, was against the Muslims in USA, and they were being chased, in a horrible way. But now what has happened is, in the last 20 years, they very cleverly positioned themselves in alliance with blacks to be looked at as victims, to be looked at as, therefore they are oppressed, and therefore they are a protected class. So now this whole law against Islamophobia has come up. It passed in the US Congress a law that says anyone who's accused of Islamophobic could be prosecuted for a criminal offense under US law anywhere in the world. So, if you are sitting in India and you don't like Islam and all that, they can be accusing you of Islamophobia under US law. It is so stupid. But this passed the US Congress. Now, it was put on the floor of the US Senate, and then it would have become law. It was put on the floor by a New Jersey senator. I live in New Jersey, and he is a senator I have supported, and Indians have supported, Senator Cory Booker. So when he put it on the floor, I figured this guy must be totally ignorant. So I called his office and said that I'm going to lobby against this, and I'm going to tell the whole Indian community that you've made a mistake. And there was no response from his office. So I made a petition and made it public. I said, "Dear Cory Booker, you have introduced this bill, and here is what's wrong with it. Basically, if you want to outlaw Islamophobia, you should also outlaw Hindu phobia, Jewish phobia, Christian phobia, Buddhist phobia.
Sikh phobia, yeah.
Yeah, Sikh phobia. You should outlaw the phobias against all religion. Why only Islam? What is so special? Why?" So, the Muslim genius, I would say, political genius, is they gave Islam a special status that they have to be protected in a very special way because they're victims. So this idea that Muslims are victims and therefore Islamophobia should be criminalized, and therefore people who are accused of Islamophobia have to be cancelled. This is a very, very big thing.
But victims of what? I fail to understand. These people, let's look at Hindu civilization. Hindus have been oppressed for 1,000 years.
Yes.
First 800 years by Islamic invaders, then 200 years by Christian invaders.
Right.
And plus Portuguese and French and all kinds of Syrian and all. Now the thing is who has victimized them? What is their victimization? And how they are the richest people in the world. They are the fastest growing race in the world, or the religion in the world. Every single country is suffering since they have come and found refuge in their country. There is chaos. I was in Europe. Almost every country I visited in last trip few months ago, every single country, the general complaint is about them. Who is victimizing them? They brought World Trade Center down. They attacked Taj Hotel in India. They committed genocide of Hindus in Kashmir. They committed genocide of Hindus in Direct Action Day in Calcutta. They committed rapes and genocide of millions and millions of Hindus in Bangladesh. Wherever you go, they have been doing this. As recently as they beheaded Kanhaiya Lal, IS has destroyed Afghanistan. Islam has also destroyed Iraq and Iran and Syria and Libya. Who is victimizing them?
So, this is exactly correct what you are saying, because you and I know the logic, and intelligent people know this logic. This is fact-based. The data is very clear. What the Muslims have succeeded in doing is making strategic alliances with blacks in America and Dalits in India. And they put this coalition together. So the Dalits in India who have a gripe, they've been taught that, okay, this gripe is against a majority, and the majority are Brahmins and they are Hindus, and we are the Muslims. We also have a gripe against the same people. So we have a common enemy and we should club together. And so the Dalits have been tutored by these guys that they are like the blacks of India, and Brahmins should be considered like the whites of India. So you have somebody like a Suraj Yengde at Harvard Kennedy School, who is a Dalit activist, and the Harvard people have adopted him as a poster boy, and he's all over the place. He goes around saying that Brahmins are a criminal group, they're a criminal community, and they should be they are criminalized, which means that the moment you are born as a Brahmin, you are already a criminal. I mean, this is so stupid for them to be saying that, but they're getting away with it. So the reason they're getting away is this principle called cancel culture, which is that you don't allow the opposition to speak back. And therefore, their evidence, what you are saying right now, which makes sense, what I'm saying is not allowed. And if you control the discourse because you captured Harvard, which is a really big part of the story, capturing Harvard with this kind of a thing means that they have a very powerful fortress that they control, and others are not allowed to come in. And if you are a white or a Brahmin or something, then you have to. The only way you can speak is if you confess, saying, "I'm confessing, I'm an oppressor." If you ask them, "Okay, I am born in this way. What do you want me to do?" They're saying you have to confess you are an oppressor. And only if you confess you're an oppressor, we can fix you, because then you'll be self-conscious of being an oppressor, and you'll be apologetic and things like that. This is actually a very illogical thing that has happened, and shame on Harvard as a major university.
I want to come to Harvard now, because I thought I'll keep it for the later part since it has come. So as a filmmaker, I went to Harvard also to study, but those times were very different, and maybe I was not aware of these kind of sinister politics and intellectual conflicts. But as a filmmaker, I'm fully aware of an unwritten handbook called Harvard to Hollywood. How Harvard uses Hollywood to do global activism. How they use Hollywood to create stereotypes about Africa, about China, about India. How Hollywood is being used and their stars and everything. So this is all governed and controlled by Harvard, I know, or Harvard-like models. There can be now spread to many other universities also. So it may not be limited to Harvard. That I know for sure. And we have seen in recent times when in India, during Shaheen Bagh, the CAA protest, and during farmers' protest, how Hollywood literally adopted the notorious Sikh militant organizations of 80s, funded them. I'm not taking any names here for strategic reasons, but they did that. And the same thing during Shaheen Bagh movement, when it was against CAA. I mean, the movement CAA was for oppressed Hindu minorities internationally.
Yes.
Right. So, and they were in tandem, they were working with the Islamic dangerous groups, which are now finally being banned, PFI and these urban Naxal groups, the Maoist groups. So tell me, please, more about Harvard. What is your understanding? If one doesn't read this book, what is it that he has to understand about Harvard's politics? And how do you connect? Why Harvard should be interested in India? India is nothing for Harvard. Why should they get into Dalit Brahmin politics of India?
Yeah. So you see, the strange thing is Harvard accuses Modi for the problems, and therefore they want to fight all the Brahmins and Hindus and all that. But I have known for 30 years Harvard doing the same things even before the Modi government. So their hatred for the Indian civilization runs deep. I used to fund them, and this whole Aryan theory, the Aryan invasion theory, the solid research output, which is fabricated and biased, but in a very powerful way, has come out of Harvard. Michael Witzel is at Harvard. So many of the big shots who are behind this anti-India thing are Harvard-based for a long time. This has nothing to do with Modi. Modi wasn't around, and these guys have a whole history there. Now the thing is, Harvard trains not only the Hollywood people. There is a Nieman Institute for Journalism and Pulitzer Institute together, and they're doing workshops teaching journalists who go and write articles in Washington Post and New York Times and Wall Street Journal. They all train there. There is a Kennedy School which trains the US Congress, and all the interns and all the staffers who do the research in Washington DC are trained. Kennedy School is the elitist place to go and learn about government affairs and all that. Even, by the way, Indian government sends babus for training to Harvard Kennedy School, which is kind of stupid. They train people for think tanks. They train people in the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum, by the way, is a Harvard spin-off, because Klaus Schwab, who runs it, he's in his 80s, he's an old guy. He was at Harvard Kennedy School as a student of Henry Kissinger. Henry Kissinger was a professor there. and he was Ken Kissinger's ace student. The two of them came up with this idea to start an organization which will be accountable to nobody. So it's not a government, it is not a university, it is not a private, it is just a, this World Economic Forum, you cannot define it. And it is a kind of a place where they bring in all the who's who, make it very fashionable to be there. And they have a very clear wokeism logic. This also we are putting on the conclusion. They are one of the people in the wokeism logic. So wokeism has been kind of now institutionalized. They brought blacks in because of Black Lives Matter. Blacks became a very useful vehicle, and combined it with this all these Islamic people, LGBTQ people, Dalit people. So I would say, victims of the world unite. That's kind of their slogan. Victims of the world unite. And we, the Harvard guys, are your voice. And we'll tell you how to go, who to dismantle. So it's become a very dangerous thing. If the Republicans get back in power, they will push back in a very aggressive way, because they've had it with this nonsense of wokeism. So, it's sad that United States, where I've lived for 52 years, mostly the presidents were centrists. Could be Clinton, could be Bush, could be Kennedy. They would operate from the center, and could be a little left of center or a little right of center. But now the politics have become very polarized. There's very little center left. And this is very sad for America. Harvard is particularly dangerous for India because guess what? Indian billionaires are funding some of this work. There is a Mahindra Humanities Center with his name on the board. There is a Piramal Center. There is a Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute. There is funding by Bajaj. There is funding by a lot of other people, Tatas. So, actually, I'll tell you this. One of the titles...
I believe your book was going to be published by a major publishing house.
Yes.
Just few weeks or few days before that, they dropped out saying that you have exposed billionaires, and then they will have a problem with billionaires. Is that true? I mean,
yes. So it was less than 90 days left for the actual official launch. It was about ready to go to the printer. And then I get a call from this top person who's also a friend of mine. I mean, the sad thing is he's also a friend of mine. He runs one of the biggest publishing houses, famous, everybody knows them in India. And he says, listen, I have a problem because my people are telling me that you've named all these people so many times. And would you be willing to drop their names? So I said, hell no, because if I drop their names, then there's nothing left. I have to prove, I'm proving my thesis by giving examples. And he said, no, you can't say that Mahindra's institute said this, or, Piramal Center said this. I said, but they are saying it on their website, and it's written on the front of the building. And when a person stands up, when a Suraj Yengde stands up and makes these nonsensical statements, in the back, there is a banner saying Lakshmi Mittal South Asia Institute. They are proudly putting their name out. Why do you want me to hide it? Because they're not hiding it. I'm not telling you some forensic secret that I pulled out, in the middle of the night. I'm just telling you what is public domain knowledge that these people are doing. People in India are sleeping. I'm trying to wake them up. The government should know this. That maybe the billionaires are doing it unintentionally, and maybe they are being used by Harvard, or maybe they're doing it because their kid will go to college. They will get some business deal because they'll be on some committee and board with Bill Gates and famous people, or maybe it's.
I think it's more colonized mind, Rajiv. This is my understanding, because I have practiced a very high level advertising all my life in US than in India. I was associated with some of the biggest brands, and therefore I have dealt with some of these industrialists, because at that time, if you have to bring Coca-Cola, then Indian businessman has to have 51% stakes and all. So I've worked with a whole lot of them. The problem is that they feel very embarrassed. They think, because they've seen their parents funding freedom movement or something like that, wearing kurta pajama and tel wali ki dukaan thi, and then suddenly he became billionaire, or they were selling things shop to shop and became billionaire. They are very guilty and embarrassed of their backgrounds.
Yes.
They somehow want the validation and appreciation from the West.
Yes.
They want to sit with Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Rockefellers and Fords. They think they want to belong there, but despite doing everything, nobody cares about them. That puts them in further guilt. But anyways, and it happened with my book also, Urban Excel. The same thing publishing outset told me, take out the names, and we have no problems. I said, no, I'll take the book from you. I will not take out the names.
So let me tell you one thing. One of the titles I considered was Billionaire Naxals. I consider that title.
Okay. So
I consider that title because,
that
because
we can collaborate, I can give you a lot of inside stories on that. I have a lot of work on that.
Yeah, I know, because I thought that the urban Naxals are not, there are some specialized kind of urban Naxals. They are not Jholawalas in JNU. These are billionaire. They are urbanites who are billionaire urbanites. And they are spending a lot of the money. Like Mittal Institute, they put out $50 million to start it, and then they pump more money. And tens of millions of dollars from all these guys are going. Now, they could all get together and start some liberal arts college in India and to take on Harvard. Rather than doing that, they are funding the opposing side just to get a brand name. It makes them prestigious. They will sit at the table, high table with a bunch of white guys, and they feel very proud that, we made it on the world stage. But Indians need to know, I'm not saying that they are doing anything illegal, because it's their money. They have a right to spend however they want their money. I have no right to stop them. And, if they want to continue, they should continue. But just like they have a right to spend their money and support any ideology, and Harvard has a right, I agree, to promote any ideology they want. Similarly, you and I have a right also to criticize. I mean, it's not just one way. I mean, and so I'm doing an honest job of advising the billionaires that your name, family name, and your money is being used in ways, some of them are good also, but some of the ways used that we are pointing out are anti-India, and Indian people are not going to like it, because this is against your culture. You should say that you should pick up the phone and tell the Harvard president, you cannot use my name and do these things. I'm going to back out of it. And believe me, if the Indian billionaires got together and together they took up stand, Harvard will bow, because Harvard will have a huge scandal if the billionaires, if it became a public thing that all the Indian funding has gone out because Harvard has been declared anti-India. That would be a very big embarrassment, because Harvard cannot afford to be branded this way by a major country. Harvard wants to be known as sort of a very liberal and equal and free justice and all
which
this.
It is not.
Yeah. They want to consider themselves the center of social justice in the world. And it is their idea of social justice, but you and I are not allowed to go and debate. All I'm saying is, okay, you have a point, all that is valid, but I also have a point. Why don't you let people like me come in? Now, for instance, when they're doing conferences on caste and economics, they have never invited R. Vaidyanathan with IIM, who's a major figure who's written books for 30 years on the economics of caste, and he's published so much and done so much research. You would think that they would invite him. You would think that they would quote his work. He has never been referenced, never been invited. So I invited him to write the foreword for this book, because I want to create that sort of tension where people who know R. Vaidyanathan should understand that Harvard never included him, and people like him in any position, any capacity, any conference, any panel when they're talking about the caste system and the economic implications. So I could go on giving so many examples where they bring people of one point of view and not the other point of view. The other point of view is cancelled. So this is a sham. This so-called free thinking and intellectual freedom and all that stuff that Harvard is promoting is a bunch of nonsense. They are not really honoring that.
Yeah. So okay. So now I want to come to I want to come to this Dalit Islamic nexus. Okay, it's a little delicate thing, sensitive issue, but I want, because I'm sitting with you, and I have deep respect for you. Nobody else besides you and I today in India speaks on these issues.
Right.
I'm doing research for my next film. So we have been researching for the last 4 years, and our focus area is Bengal during partition. So I want to understand what happened. So if you see in Bengal, most of the Muslims were not of Arabic ancestry. They didn't come from Arab and Persia or Turkey or anywhere. Most of them were criminals. A lot of them were either very poor or criminals. Okay, and they were criminals during Mughal times. So people were caught pickpocketing or thieves and rapists and all these people. They'll put them in jail and convert them into Islam. So they became Muslims. And there were a lot of poor people who became Muslims, and because of the Mughal Empire, and they were converted. and out of force with a sword or whatever. So most of these Muslims primarily were either from very poor background or criminal background. On the other hand, there were Dalits. Dalits was also poor. So Muslim League created a nexus with these people, and they said, you won't be safe in India. It's a Brahminical society. So therefore, you come and join us in this war against Hindu civilization, and let's create a separate country for ourselves, and we'll keep, all both of us are oppressed, we'll be very happy. So this is coming from there. Mughals were ruling India, and they were calling Muslims oppressed, and they were calling Dalits oppressed. It's a very strange theory. I have never understood it. So they left. So Mandal, who was the leader, if you read the history of partition, he fled India, and with his millions of Dalits, they went to Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, they were oppressed, Dalits. They were killed. The genocide was committed against them. They came back, ran back to India. In Marchijapi, if you have read the history of Marchijapi, you'll find the leftist government, which was pro-Dalit and pro-Muslims. They killed them in daylight, broad daylight. Jyoti Basu's government killed Dalits. Now, despite this kind of a history, in India, the Islamic Dalit nexus is flourishing. And if you take the census, if you put Islamic population and the OBC and Dalit population together, then everybody else is the minority, they are the majority. And still they are talking against the majority. Brahmins today are less than 5%. And I was reading somewhere that the majority, more than 70-75% of them are landless laborers or poor teachers or poor clerks. And they don't have any property or any money. Now, what is this kind of a hypocritical world we are living in, where people who are controlling intellectual narrative, people who are controlling the narrative power centers, right? Now, I see in your book, I'm shocked and appalled that Indian government is doing nothing about it, that you are saying now in Harvard also the same caste politics has entered. Please tell me, what is this happening? Should people, Kshatriyas you call, wake up and go and fight out in this Kurukshetra of narratives? What is your advice to them?
So this is what you touched upon is a very important, it's delicate, it's explosive, but it has to be done. So I'll tell you one thing. Ambedkar, who is sort of the godfather of this whole movement, the Dalits are loyal to him, a large percentage of them. Ambedkar was against Islam. Ambedkar, in this book, I have a section, a 20-30 page section on Ambedkar and wokeism, showing that actually he would be against wokeism as defined today, because he was against caste and he had a fight with the Gandhi. But he was argued that Indians, the Dalits, should not convert to Islam or Christianity because it's bad for India. He did not. He identified them as what I am calling breaking India forces. He didn't use that term, but he identified them as breaking India forces. And he said that Dalits should not convert. And he had very harsh things to say against Islam. In fact, if you look at some of the statements I've mentioned about what Ambedkar says, that would today be called Islamophobia. By today's definition, he was Islamophobic. So he is so solidly Indian, while he's he's got problems with Hinduism for caste, and he has fight with Gandhi. He and Gandhi has fight and all that. I think to some extent it was also Gandhi's fault, because there was a very important meeting where the Hindus invited Ambedkar to give a talk on the future of Hinduism and what he advises and so on. And he gave them an advance copy of his speech. And in that, he proposed that they should dismantle this caste and all that, and then everything could be fine. They did not like his speech because he attacked Hindu Dharma and he attacked those leaders, and they asked him to change it. And just like you or I would not change our text because some publisher says it, he also said, hell no. He refused to go, and he published a very more strong version of that speech in a separate book, little booklet. And that took off in a big way. And that sort of inspired this whole, igniting his movement and taking the Dalits away from Hinduism. Maybe Gandhi, and then he and Gandhi had a correspondence battle. He wrote to Gandhi, Gandhi wrote back, and he wrote back, and so on. So this polarization fight between Ambedkar and Gandhi had a lot to do with this whole rise of anti-Hinduism and things like that. He had problem with caste only, but he also praised Hinduism for many other things. So anyway, that was the Ambedkar, and I've got a large section in this book on that. Today's Ambedkarites are not loyal to that. Today's Ambedkarites, when they align themselves with Muslims, with Islam, should be told that if they want to really be inspired by Ambedkar, and Suraj Jengde calls himself the Ambedkar 2.0, he calls himself the successor of Ambedkar, but his attitudes are very different. So this alignment of two different groups, each claiming to be victim of the same oppressor, and have this victim bye-bye, is actually very dangerous. And now they've internationalized it. They've gone to USA and joined up with those people and created this international wokeism. So that is what we are suffering right now.
Okay, so now you have written, I'm very happy that you have written about it. You have said that Sanskrit is being targeted.
Yes.
You say Sanskrit is being declared an oppressive language.
Yes.
Then you say gurus are being targeted. Yes. You write that because the Indian equivalent of whites are Brahmins, all gurus are deemed guilty of asserting their hegemony over society. But all gurus were not Brahmins, a lot of them were Kshatris. Right. Then you say deities and festivals, pilgrimage centers, symbolism, rituals, all these structures from the past were constructed by Brahmins, elites to establish hegemony. Then you write Vedic Shastras and Itihas. Vedic texts and related works are seen as hegemonic using the Marxist doctrine promoted by Antonio Gramsci, founder of Communist Party of Italy, or blah, blah, blah. Family system. The traditional family structure is openly being attacked by as a mechanism by which parents pass on the oppressiveness to the children. Yes. Now, the thing is, I have just, I don't know if you've seen it or not, people have not seen, on my I Am Buddha channel, for the first time in my life, I attempted a satire. Not a stand-up, because I'm sitting in that show, a 1 hour long show, a 40-minute long show on wokeism. Okay. I said, why wokes are a joke, but it's a satire piece, but I make the same point. Now, the problem is in this wokeism and in this cancel culture and this mad race to hate everybody because you are a failure in your life, or you are not being able to articulate your own problems to the world, you are disgruntled. So earlier, disgruntled people in a democracy won't vote for the ruling government. Now you have just taken this, you're like a mad Islamic terrorist who has been brainwashed to become a suicide bomber. You just go and without knowing, you are just blasting yourself, exploding yourself and killing innocent people. So similarly, this wokeism, what they are doing is they're destroying all good things of the world. They destroyed Gandhi's statue. My friends from in California, they sent me pictures. They were there. They broke Gandhi's statue. In England, they did that. And I think in US and few other places, they did that. So they want to destroy everything good because I don't know what is the reason. It's some kind of a racial frustration, collective anger. But anger can be manifested in many different ways. A lot of people, Martin Luther King did not manifest his anger like that. Gandhi was also angry. He did not manifest it like that. Yes. A lot of great scholars, Vivek Agnihotri, Aurobindo, all these great scholars were very angry. They never manifested like that. But Sanskrit is the mother of all languages.
Yes.
Why? Language is not a Brahmin language. Like I always say, Urdu is a beautiful language. Just because Muslims speak it doesn't mean you destroy the language.
Yeah.
You destroy the misuse of the language. Please tell me how these things are targeted. Why are they targeting? Because there is larger conspiracy behind this.
Yeah, and just to add to what you said, Barack Obama did not want to destroy the structures of society. I mean, he said that he wants to champion the cause of the blacks, but it is not by destroying the founding fathers. And he was trying to tame the aggressive blacks, these black nationalist type of people. He wanted them to this whole African inspired black movement, which was on a very aggressive war foot, Islamized Islam. A lot of blacks are Islamized, by the way. They're Muslim blacks, So he was very moderate. He was a centrist. Now the wokists don't like don't agree with Obama on many things. They feel that Obama was too mild and he was too accommodating. And anyone who accommodates the old structures of oppression is himself complicit. He's also, and Sanskrit, to your question, Sanskrit is seen as a language which is which is the foundation of all the Shastras. And these Shastras and the Vedic Shastras are accused of being Brahmanical in the sense that the charge is that the Dalits were not allowed to read, the women were not allowed to read, the only Brahmins are allowed to read. So the control of knowledge was in the hands of of the Brahmins through Sanskrit. And they did not want to write it down until much later. It was oral, so they kept it secret. So knowledge was secret. It was their own property. Nobody else could participate in it. And therefore, the dismantling of Shastras and by kind of abusing Sanskrit as a bad platform. The Sanskrit platform has had a problem. This is sort of the argument being given. In fact,
very logical logic, yeah, absolutely logical logic, yeah.
Yeah, in my book, The Battle for Sanskrit, actually that whole 500-page book.
And I would recommend to everybody, it's lying there. I have read that book, and I very often open any page and I refer to it. It gives me insights into a whole lot of things. I recommend everybody should read it. Now, Rajiv ji, you are one of those rare Indian, or I would say Hindu intellectuals who also take deep interest in technology and artificial intelligence, and very rarely people are talking about it, You write that entirely new structures of oppression are being erected using technologies like artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And then you also write that you are referring to digital caste system and stuff like that.
Right.
Please tell me how artificial intelligence, I remember earlier also I heard you talk about it. You talk about that artificial intelligence in India. You always complain, and your complaint is with right-wingers that they are not even aware that what's happening in the modern world and how artificial intelligence can really destroy Hindu civilization. What do you mean? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. You know that when I came to the United States to do my PhD in physics, I switched to computer science, and I was in the artificial intelligence before it was a big deal. It was very preliminary science, but I've followed it ever since. And so in my book, prior to this, there was a book I wrote called Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power, which is a book of 400-500 pages on this whole issue. In a nutshell, what I'm saying is that, people like Google and Facebook and YouTube people and Twitter and all these guys, through artificial intelligence algorithms, are controlling what you're allowed to say, what is banned. Just this morning, we were notified by YouTube that the 77 YouTube posts of ours have been YouTube videos have been blocked, and just for no reason. And they gave some stupid reason like it is against our policy for you to preach any particular religion. Come on, it's nonsensical. I don't even understand it. But it's an algorithm. There's no human being involved. So the point I'm making is that now these algorithms are carrying out the instructions, the strategic biases of the owners. So a few people are owners at the top, and they put algorithms as sort of the middle tier. And these algorithms are running social media. They're deciding who to ban and whatnot and whatnot. So artificial intelligence is replacing human intelligence or augmenting human intelligence. And it's a force multiplier. So people with AI can do a lot more than was previously possible with a few number of people. If you want to censor billions of posts every day on the internet, you will need tens of millions of human beings to do it manually. So, but with artificial intelligence, machines can do it for you. So what is happening is, I'm calling this a digital caste system, in the sense that if you are deemed Islamophobic, you will be downgraded, and after some warnings, you'll be banned and removed from the platform. If you are anti-wokeist very actively, they will not promote you if they're scared of banning you. And if they are not scared of banning you, they'll just ban you. On the other hand, somebody who's Indophobic can get away with it. So somebody gets to decide the ideology by which the future world will run. And if you want to do well in this digital age, you comply. You say, okay, I will avoid this. I will say this because then that's good for the algorithm. So the algorithm is training human beings to comply according to the wishes of the master. So this is a new structure of oppression. I'm saying if you really want to fight structures of oppression, Forget this some old structure which is no longer, no Brahmin is bothering you, or no Brahmin is denying you a job and all that. That is all kind of nonsensical stuff. But if you really want to tackle structures of oppression which are present and becoming stronger in the future, you have to go after this whole digital, what I call the digital caste system, in the conclusion chapter.
I'm willing to buy that, and as a proof, I have evidence myself, because since my accounts have been always had huge engagement, and they've been growing almost every day in large numbers since my film The Kashmir Files came. Anybody can see my Twitter follower count has got stuck at one number. For last, it came in March. Since then, you can check today's number and you check it after a few weeks, you'll find the same number. It goes down, comes back, goes down, comes back, something like that happens. It doesn't grow, both Instagram and this. My Facebook keeps growing. I don't know why. So I have noticed that. And recently when I did this, I don't know, I thought, okay, maybe because Kashmir Files, the Hindu, Muslims, Islam, a lot of people are reporting it. But few weeks ago, when I put the wokes are a joke, my YouTube, this thing, since then suddenly, and I promoted it, and I used woke word many times as a joke, and suddenly it started going down. So there is definitely a correlation. That's why I say algorithm is the new God. Everybody else, we are, you can boast about your own achievements, but actually algorithm is the new this thing. Okay, Rajivji, now I know we have spent a lot of time. I want to now ask you, you have spoken about Indian businesses becoming the missionaries of a new religion.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, you spoke about billionaires and all that. What is this new religion? Is it wokeism?
Yes.
Or is it, what is it?
Wokeism is like a church. I have a section called the Church of Wokeism, because first of all, like the church, it is dogma. And you're not allowed to argue with the dogma. You'll become a heretic. You'll become an infidel. And if you are an infidel, then you are to be cancelled, just like heretics of the church. And there are these high priests who are the experts on deciding who gets to be a protected class, who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed, without proper hearing, without even proper justice. So it has become like a very dogmatic church of wokeism. It is hardly liberal. You know, when they say this is the progressive wing, they call themselves progressives. There's hardly anything progressive about it. It's pretty retrograde, in my opinion. So that's why I call this the Church of Wokeism.
Now, we'll close in a couple of questions. But in the end, two very important questions I have to ask you, because this will concern Indians and people at large, especially the YouTube audience, because I know the modern YouTube audience reads less and they want to watch more. You have snakes in the Ganga, you have written, but barbarians in India's gate, people who, you can see there's a big chart, and it's a very interesting, you have brought in WEF also into this.
Yes.
You have number 2 is laws, implemented systems in place, and intermediate long-term destruction of family life, loss of religious life, depopulation, metaverse, lots of things you have covered in this. Barbarians is a very harsh word. I always call them barbarians because these Naxals, they actually kill young kids and they cut their stomach open, they take their intestines out, and then they show it to the entire village. And therefore, I call them barbarians, because the urban Naxals have the same traits. What they are doing is the same thing with the innocent Indian population. These are intellectuals, professors, people in position of power, influencers, people in media, a lot of people in media, and the people who host these literature festivals and, who run these elite narrative clubs. So therefore, I call them barbarians. Who are the barbarians in your mind? And if you don't mind, you can also directly hint at it, or if you're like me, if you want to take names, so that people can relate and they can be warned. See, it's not enough, Rajivji, I've understood. I used to be subtle. But I realized that our people are not so politically savvy and they don't take hints. But if you give them some examples, okay, this is how these barbarians look like. Here is a sample for you. Then they get alerted and they come in big force and the Kshatri inside them comes out. So
I'll give
please
you,
explain this.
I'll give you there is a attack on IITs, which I think is very barbaric.
Oh yeah, I forgot to ask you that. Yeah.
Harvard is attacking IITs on the allegation, and there's a whole book from Harvard University professor who is Harvard University Press is publishing it. The professor is an Indian, herself a Brahmin actually, but very guilty probably. So this is an example of a very barbaric behavior in the sense that they are so brutal. They picked random examples from here and there, and they are claiming that Harvard is a Brahmanical society, Brahmanical structure, and that IITs are a Brahmanical structure, and IITs were created to oppress Dalits, and all of this nonsense is going on, and now they file lawsuits against IT companies in Silicon Valley for hiring Brahmins and denying opportunity to Dalits. So now there is all this law going around. Legal changes are happening, which are saying that caste identity should be considered as racism. And so people are hiding, who they are and all that. This terrorizing of Indian tech workers and Indians in general, which is starting to happen in places, is, I think, a very harsh, kind of a brutal act. And this is going on. So now today's barbarians are not sort of with the physical sword barbaric, but with the control of the discourse, the control of law, the control of your reputation. They can kill your reputation, and the digital media can sort of decide who's in and who's not in. I consider that to be a barbaric act in a civic society, and intellectual barbarianism is what I consider this to be.
You are right, because one of the reasons I resigned from the so-called Bollywood mindset and became an independent filmmaker, despite so many sacrifices and struggle, was that Bollywood is taken over by all these barbarians, and they are using Bollywood soft power to advance their agenda, and
Right.
the governments consecutively have failed to use, like American during World War, if you know, White House gave a lot of CIA especially, gave billions of dollars to Hollywood to become soft power of America,
Yes.
to help them in the World War. Now, in India, nobody has understood this. They never
Right.
used Bollywood as soft power. They used only Bollywood to dance in certain events and functions.
Right.
But Hollywood and these barbarians and urban exiles understood the power of this thing, and therefore you'll find some of the most famous and very powerful production houses, directors and actors and stars today are working for their cause. They oppose CAA. They go and stand at farmers' protest against the cause of India, and they are constantly demeaning Hindu civilization and Hindu culture. And this is one of my biggest fight with them, and that's what I'm fighting alone, standing here. Now, when I say government and soft power, government and culture, government and education, I am not very happy or satisfied. In fact, my only biggest complaint is that despite 8 years of ruling, if the government wanted, they could have used culture. Bollywood comes as a part of it, theater, publishing, all these things, not by controlling it, but giving it an ideological direction,
Right.
and the education system to strengthen Hindu civilization,
Yes.
and use Hindus and market Hindu civilization to the world. See, Korea, with no civilizational history, has used Korean culture to
Right.
become the biggest force in the world. It brings money also, and
Right.
that's how they are becoming big economic power.
Right.
Japan has done it, China has done it, so many countries have done it. But the greatest, oldest, most ancient, only surviving civilization, yoga also, now the West has trying to appropriate, they have converted, made it their own.
Right.
You can't change hamburgers, you can't change pizza, but yoga can be changed. Even a lot of Indian gurus also go out and they say, yoga is not Hindu, because
Right.
it's fashionable to say yoga is not Hindu.
Correct.
So what would be your advice if you are sitting face to face with the Prime Minister of India. And he says, okay, Mr. And this is my last question to you. And it's an important question. You can think before answer this. He says, dear Mr. Rajiv Malhotra, I give you 5 minutes. Give me one advice which can really change the course of Hindu civilization. What would that be?
So I have been asked this question by some top people in national security to write them a one-page memo, which will go to the Prime Minister, which will have a few points of what are the action items they should take. So I'll give you one of those because you asked for one. So I would create a liberal arts university, which will take on Harvard and which will be Vedic liberal arts. We used to have 64 kalas. And there is no reason to have a Western idea of social justice, Western idea of gender, Western idea of diversity. These ideas of Harvard, which are going through getting into liberal arts, are spreading into IITs and IIMs. And the new education policy actually encourages liberal arts, but not realizing that the liberal arts that the professors are aware of is all coming from Harvard. So in a sense, they are spreading this Harvard ideology that you and I are criticizing. They're spreading it even more into the Indian education. So I would ask him that we need to create a very large scale university, which is going to do research on liberal arts from the Indian Vedic point of view and teach it and take Harvard on and give them a good run for the money, rather than people like Ashoka University and Kriya University and Godrej Culture Labs and Azim Premji's foundation, rather than those guys creating a new landscape where they're copying Harvard and bringing it into India. I would say that we need a foundation, which is a Vedic foundation, to give it back on our terms. And that is not happening at all. Nobody is thinking about a very strong liberal arts university on a world scale that could give it back. Second thing would be, we need a Hindu Al Jazeera. We need, there is BBC for the one group. There is Fox Network for another group. There is Al Jazeera. We don't have anything like that. I mean, I've talked about it for 20 years. Why don't some Adani or some businessman or some tycoon put in $1 billion? I'm not talking about some small chota mota thing. I'm talking about put $1 billion. So if we have a university of Vedic liberal arts and we have a no-nonsense international network, it cannot be India only. Then I think that will change. And the third area is, like you said, Bollywood. The government has to give direction. All this would be the job of the HRD minister and the culture minister, but I'm very sorry to say that they have been serious disappointments. I mean, I've met each of them. They seem like nice guys, decent guys, but they haven't been able to do anything. Whether it's being blocked by the bureaucrats, I don't know. But this is the mandate that should come out of culture and HRD, all the stuff I'm talking about, because this is their battleground, which people like you and I are fighting as private individuals. And we're not getting any help from the government machinery. And that's disappointing.
Rajivji, thanks a lot. You are truly inspirational and I like your energy at this age. And I used to think I am the only high energy person. You are very, very high energy. And you are a true warrior, true Kshatriya for our cause. And like you said, like Rajivji said, one Vedic liberal art university, one Al Jazeera kind of a news channel or news group, I would say, which also uses podcasts and all modern multimedia stuff, and especially targeted at the younger generations and youth. And I would add the third point to use the medium of cinema, because cinema is modern literature. These are modern textbooks, and also including OTT, documentaries, whatever. And now we have 3 or 4 some great examples, films like the Kashmir Files, Karthik, and recently Kantara. They have proved that when you show pure Hindu civilizational stories, concerns, then there's a huge market for that. This fake market which Bollywood has created is getting destroyed. So thanks a lot, Rajiv ji. And in the end, if you have a copy, why don't you pick it up? And that will be a good picture, Rajiv ji. You have a copy of your book?
Yes, I have a
copy. Why don't you just pick it up?
I will put it here.
And dear friends, you can buy this book immediately. And I would really, really appreciate, and I'll encourage anybody who writes a review, You can tag me on Twitter or wherever. I'll RT it. Let's spread the word. There are no big publishing houses behind that. But if you and I, all the viewers, if we support these causes, then you will not just have one Rajiv Malhotra or one Vivek Agnihotri. You'll have hundreds of them. Like Vivekanand said, give me 100 warriors and I'll change the face of Hindu civilization. He never got 100 warriors in his lifetime. I consider myself one of them. Rajivji, thank you. I wish you all the best.
And I want to make one suggestion to you before we close. How about us developing the Harvard files?
Oh, sure. Why not?
I have a lot of material, and I think we can take on these billionaires and many other things going on in Harvard. Harvard is such a large empire in its own right. Nobody, until this book, nobody has ever written a criticism of Harvard. Can you believe it? I mean, people have written books to criticize Bill Gates, they criticize the president, they criticize everybody, the royal family, but no one has criticized Harvard because they control the discourse, they control the publishing houses, and so nobody has had the guts and the courage to stand up.
Because the snakes are all coming out of Harvard. How can?
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you very much.
Thank you.